There are people who don't even know your name, but save you at the exact moment you need it most. When I didn't have enough money in my pocket to eat my fill, a stranger gave me enough strength to keep going that day. I remember that evening very clearly. No rain, no wind, but I was cold inside. I had exactly $3 in my pocket. I knew, with that amount, I couldn't eat until I was full. But I also knew that if I didn't eat, I wouldn't have the strength for my night shift. I stood in front of the eatery for a long time. The smell of hot food wafting from the kitchen. The sound of a knife hitting a cutting board. The sizzle of a pan. I stepped inside, sat in the corner, opened the menu, looked, then looked again. In the end, I ordered the cheapest dish. When I ate slowly, not to savor it, but because I was afraid of it ending. I thought of the days before, when sometimes I only drank water and went to sleep, when sometimes I split a pack of noodles into 2 meals. When I was almost finished, the owner walked out. He looked at me, then looked at the bill. He didn't speak right away. A moment later, he returned, placed his hand on the table, said softly, "Today, you don't need to pay." I looked up, didn't understand. He only smiled, said, "Eat your fill. Then go back to your studies." I held my money, hands shaking. I left the shop, stomach warm, eyes stinging. That was the first time someone I didn't know fed me a meal. There are books that cannot be bought with money, only borrowed with trust. Textbooks for my major were very expensive. I had known that since my first day in the library. I used to stand for a long time in front of the shelves. Pick one up, open it, then put it back down. Not because I didn't need it, but because I didn't have enough money. One day, a professor walked by. He looked at me, then asked, "Do you need this book?" I nodded. He didn't ask anything else. Just took the book, placed it on my table. "You borrow it, no due date." I took the book back to my room. Carefully, like a precious borrowed object. I read every page, underlined, took notes. It wasn't just a book. It was an opportunity. When I had no place to return to, a friend who didn't ask why gave me a night of peaceful sleep. There was a period when I didn't lack assignments. I only lacked a place to sleep. The rent was due. I counted my wallet again. Not enough. I didn't call home, not because I didn't miss them, but because I knew, on the other end of the line, they were also counting every cent. I started staying at the library later, reading, doing homework, then falling asleep at the desk. One night, a security guard walked by, woke me up, said gently, "The library is about to close." I carried my backpack outside. It was cold, strong wind. I sat at the bus stop, waiting for the last trip, even though I didn't know where to go. There were nights when I walked for a long time, not for exercise, but to delay facing a room that no longer belonged to me. In class, I started nodding off, not because of laziness, but because the night wasn't long enough to rest, and the day wasn't short enough to endure. One day, I slumped over my desk while the professor was lecturing. The whole class went quiet. Then there were a few small laughs. I looked up, eyes stinging, ears ringing. After class, a friend came close. He didn't ask much, just said, "Come to my place tonight. I have a sofa." I stood still for a few seconds. Not because I was shy, but because for the first time in many weeks, someone saw that I was tired. I brought my backpack over. The sofa was old, small, but warm. That night, I slept for 6 hours straight, without startling, without dreaming. Waking up in the morning, I saw a note stuck on the table. "Eat breakfast, then go to school." I sat and ate, slowly, as if afraid it would end. I realized there are times when what saves you isn't money, but a place to lay your back, and a person who doesn't ask why. There are signatures that aren't long, but are enough to open up a new path. That afternoon, I stood in front of the professor's door for a long time. Not because I forgot to knock, but because I didn't know how to start the conversation. Asking for a recommendation letter, for me, was harder than asking for money. Money can be calculated, kindness cannot. I knocked on the door. He looked up, looked at me through his glasses. "What do you need?" I spoke slowly, for fear of being wrong, for fear of not having enough words. I told him about the night shifts, about the times I fell asleep in class, about the times I failed subjects, about how I didn't want to give up but also didn't have many ways left. He didn't interrupt, he just listened. When I finished speaking, the room was silent. I thought, Maybe I said too much. He turned back to his desk, opened his computer, typed line by line. The sound of the keyboard echoed in the small room. Steady, slow, each keystroke sounded to me like a heartbeat. A moment later, he printed out a sheet of paper, handed it to me. Give it a try. Only a few words, but I knew. It held my name, and his reputation. I held the letter, bowed my head. Leaving the room, I stood for a long time in the hallway. Not because of joy, but because for the first time, someone I didn't know put their trust in a kid who had nothing to prove. There are people you only meet once in a lifetime, but if it weren't for them, I wouldn't be standing here today. Months later, I returned to the old eatery. By this time, I had money in my pocket. Not much, but enough to pay. The shop was still the same. The smell of hot oil, the sizzle of the pan. I sat in the exact same spot, ordered 2 portions. The owner looked at me for a moment, then recognized me. "Ah, it's you." I nodded. While eating, I remembered that evening. $3, a free meal, a sentence. Eat your fill, then go back to your studies. I stood up, went to the counter, put the money down. "Enough, and extra," I said. Back then, if it hadn't been for that meal, I probably couldn't have gone on. He looked at me, smiled lightly. "It's good that you could keep going." I walked outside. The sky was bright. I understood one thing. There are people who only appear once, but they stay for a very long time in your life.